I never expected to lose an argument to a spreadsheet, but that's exactly what happened the first time Beckett Lowe walked into my therapy room with a printed schedule in his hand. "You had her doing stairs on Tuesday," he said, tapping the page like it was evidence. "The plan says stairs start week 4. This is week 3. "The plan is a guideline, Mr. Lowe, not scripture." I kept folding a resistance band, mostly so I'd have somewhere to look besides his face, which had the particular stubbornness of a man who'd clearly Googled every term in his sister's chart. Genevieve was ready. She asked to try. "She'll say yes to anything if it means getting out of that chair faster." "That's not a flaw, that's motivation. I use it." He didn't answer right away, just looked past me at his sister, who was pretending very hard not to listen from the mat table, headphones on, one earbud conspicuously out. I'd been a physical therapist for 6 years, 5 of them at this outpatient clinic tucked behind a strip mall outside Richmond, and I thought I'd met every flavor of worried family member. The hoverers, the ones who cried in the hallway, the ones who brought casseroles like food could fix a torn ACL. I had not yet met a man who treated his sister's recovery like a hostile merger he needed to win. Genevieve had broken her femur falling off a ladder while cleaning her own gutters, which she still swore she'd never admit to their mother. She was 34, sharp-tongued, impatient with her body in a way I recognized because I'd been impatient with mine once too, after a soccer injury in college that taught me exactly how slow healing actually goes when you want it to be fast. Beckett was 2 years older, an engineer, and apparently under the impression that recovery worked like a bridge inspection: follow the codes, hit the checkpoints, sign off when it's done. "Can I talk to you outside?" he said, not a question. I followed him into the hallway anyway, because some part of me, the part that liked winning arguments almost as much as I liked helping people walk again, wanted the fight. "You don't know her," he said, voice low so Genevieve wouldn't hear. "She pushes through pain because she thinks that's what strong looks like. Our dad was like that. It's why he's got 2 replaced knees and a hip he pretends doesn't hurt." Something in his voice cracked open a little there, and I filed it away, the way you notice a hairline fracture on an X-ray before anyone says the word broken. "I don't know your dad," I said, gentler now, "but I do know Genevieve, at least the part of her that shows up here 3 times a week. And I promise you, I'm not letting her hurt herself to prove a point. I'm reading her, every session." "Reading her isn't the same as knowing her history." "No," I agreed. "So tell me, that's not me being difficult, that's me asking for information I don't have." He looked surprised, like he'd expected another round and gotten an open door instead. It threw him off balance in a way I found, against my better judgment, sort of satisfying. That was the start of it, not a truce exactly, more a ceasefire with regular skirmishes. Beckett started showing up early to sessions, arms crossed by the doorway, and I started, without quite admitting it to myself, dressing a little more carefully on the days I knew he'd be there. Which was every day, because apparently his job let him work remote 3 afternoons a week, and he'd decided his sister's rehab was where those afternoons belonged. "You're doing that thing again," Genevieve said one Thursday, mid-squat, sweat at her temples, "where you 2 glare at each other over my head like I'm not the one doing the work." "We're not glaring," I said. "He's glaring, you're smirking. It's honestly the most interesting thing that happens to me all week, and I have a rod in my femur." I didn't have a comeback for that. Weeks passed. Genevieve got stronger. The stairs I'd let her try in week 3 became a non-issue by week 5. And Beckett, to his credit, noticed. He stopped bringing the printed schedule. He started bringing coffee instead. 2 cups, 1 for his sister, and wordlessly, 1 set down near my clipboard, like he hadn't quite decided if it counted as a peace offering or just caffeine logistics. "You don't have to do that," I told him the 3rd time it happened. "I know." "Then why?" He shrugged, looked at his sister instead of me. "You were right about the stairs." "I know that too." That got the first real laugh out of him I'd heard, low and surprised, like it had been sitting unused somewhere for a while. I want to say I stayed professional the whole time, and mostly I did. I never crossed a line while Genevieve was my patient. never let anything happen that would have made either of us feel strange walking into that clinic. But I noticed things. The way he asked questions now instead of issuing statements. The way he'd started remembering the names of exercises, not to police them, just because he wanted to understand what his sister was going through. The way he looked tired sometimes, in a way that had nothing to do with sleep, and everything to do with being the sibling who'd flown in from Ohio and quietly rearranged his whole life around somebody else's healing. The way people do for family and rarely get thanked for properly. "Can I ask you something?" I said one evening after Genevieve had already left, crutches clacking cheerfully down the hallway ahead of us, like she wasn't even using them for support anymore, more for rhythm. "Why does this matter so much to you? You fought me on every single decision for a month." Beckett leaned against the doorframe, the same spot he'd stood in that first day, arms crossed, though the posture meant something different now. "Our mom got sick when we were kids. Cancer, then remission, then not remission. Dad worked 2 jobs. I was 15, Genevieve was 13, and there wasn't really anyone else, so I learned to watch for the signs. The days she was pushing too hard, pretending she felt fine because she didn't want us to worry." He paused. "I guess I never stopped watching, even when the person doesn't need it anymore." I didn't say anything for a second because I understood that kind of vigilance more than I wanted to admit. I'd built my whole career on it, on the particular ache of wanting to protect people from their own stubborn hope. Maybe that's why we'd butted heads so hard. We weren't opposites. We were the same instinct, aimed from 2 different directions. "She's going to be okay," I said. "She already is. You can let some of that watching go." "Can I?" He looked at me, and it wasn't really a question about his sister anymore. I should have kept it professional right there, should have said something brisk about discharge paperwork and follow-up appointments. But instead I said, "Ask me again after her last session." He smiled, really smiled, not the tight, wary thing from that first week, and said, "I'm counting the days now, for an entirely different reason than I was a month ago." "That's inappropriate, Mr. Lowe." "Beckett. That's inappropriate, Beckett." "Duly noted," he said, and didn't look sorry at all. Genevieve's discharge came 4 weeks later, on a bright, ordinary Tuesday. She walked out of that clinic on her own 2 legs, no cane, barely a limp, laughing about something with the front desk staff, and I stood there feeling the particular quiet pride that never really gets old, no matter how many times you watch someone get their life back piece by piece. Beckett lingered by the door after his sister had already gone to bring the car around. "So," he said, "officially not your patient's brother anymore, just a guy. Just a guy who spent a month accusing me of malpractice via spreadsheet." In my defense, the spreadsheet had really compelling formatting. I laughed, and something in my chest that had been carefully, professionally locked for 6 weeks came loose all at once. "Dinner," I said, before I could talk myself out of it. "Not a session, not a follow-up, just dinner." "I'd like that," he said, "though fair warning, I might still ask a lot of questions." "I'd expect nothing less." I think about that sometimes, the strange, particular way love can grow out of conflict, how the people who fight hardest for someone they're scared of losing are so often mistaken for difficult, when really they're just terrified in a language nobody taught them to speak softly. I don't know if I'd have looked twice at Beckett Lowe if he'd walked in agreeable and easy, nodding along to every plan without a single question. Maybe it was the arguing that showed me who he really was, not a man who doubted my competence, but one who'd learned, the hard way, that love sometimes looks like refusing to look away. We still argue, Beckett and I, 2 years on, about smaller things now, whose turn it is to pick the restaurant, whether he's allowed to supervise my long runs, the way he used to supervise his sister's exercises. Genevieve rolls her eyes at both of us and calls it foreplay, which is deeply unfair and also, I'll admit, not entirely wrong. Sometimes I wonder how many people mistake someone's fierce, clumsy protectiveness for something colder than it is, and how many good things almost don't happen because 2 people were too busy defending their corners to notice they were standing in the same one all along. I don't have a clean answer for that. I just know that the man who once measured my competence in a spreadsheet is the same man who, on our wedding day, stood up during his toast and said the truest thing anyone's ever said about me, that I taught him the difference between watching over someone and trusting them to walk on their own, and that somewhere in between, he'd fallen for the woman brave enough to tell him so to his face.